Monster Jam Maximum Destruction is one of the weirdest monster truck games ever made. The game's main focus is not racing, it's not freestyle, it's not on doing stunts or trying to look cool for the audience. No, this one is a truck battle royale, which honestly might be a concept that would work better today as opposed to when this came out. But I digress. The game still does have a racing mode. It's about as bare bones of a racing mode as you could get, but at least it's there. The exact same thing could be said about this game's freestyle mode. You get one arena, couple ramps, and just a bunch of crush cars lined up in the middle of all of it. Which certainly makes it the least fleshed out Monster Jam video game freestyle mode. But at the end of the day, at least it's functional. Right. You see, there's just one problem with this mode. You can't win. I'm not making this up. I looked through every single Monster Jam Maximum Destruction freestyle that I could find on YouTube, and not a single person was able to beat the mode on the maximum difficulty. Players have had 23 years to figure this out, and yet, as far as I can tell, no one has done it. So, that's where I'm gonna step in. Being someone that's spent way more hours on this game than probably most people, maybe I'll finally be the one to crack the code. So without further ado, let's try to beat the impossible freestyle in Monster Jam Maximum Destruction. So, how does freestyle even work? Well, for starters, instead of having a number out of 10 score, or any system that uses points, our freestyle is instead measured by money. And I just gotta say, these are some very cheap cars. But you don't just get money for smashing cars, you get money for doing jumps, donuts, and jumping through these Monster Jam hoops, which are worth 500 bucks. So that's fine and all, but how much money do we have to make to actually win? Oh no. Yeah, we gotta win $45,000 if we want to beat this freestyle. Which wouldn't be so bad if everything didn't give you such little money. I mean, come on, $50 for a whole car? Really? So with only a minute 30 on the clock, I think it's pretty clear why this is gonna be so hard. But let's go ahead and give it a shot. On my first attempt, I would go for crush cars, I would go for jumps, donuts, pretty much whatever I could, because at this point I didn't really know what would be optimal. And by the end of it, I made 15,550 bucks. Not very good. We were just under $30,000 off from getting the goal. Clearly some improvements needed to be made. So on my second attempt, I mainly focused on jumps, until the end where I started to crush cars. Doing this, I was able to net $110 more than my last run. So not really the biggest improvement, but hey, it's progress. On my third attempt, there was a bit more focus on the crush cars. Specifically, I realized you kinda have to stay on the cars for a little bit to have truly crushed them. I also found a little bit of a strategy, where if you just spam— oh wait, I didn't even talk about the jump yet. Okay, yeah, so there's a thing in this game where you can manually jump. If you flick your stick down and then up very quickly, you can do a jump. Which is completely realistic, obviously. But yeah, if you do that, you'll get points for being airborne, and if you do that while running into crates, you'll kinda get some extra points. All in all, this run made me $17,420. So then on my fourth attempt, of course I tried to abuse the jumping into the barriers strat. And one thing I very quickly noticed is after a little while of doing jumps, I would no longer be receiving as many points. Which brings us to a little mechanic that this game has.
Stelling!
Basically, on your jump and your donut tricks, there is a cooldown effect. Meaning after doing a certain amount of jumps or donuts, you have to mix it up with a different stunt before you can get any more points. Using this knowledge, I was able to get $18,450. But then on my next attempt, I had quite the breakthrough. Because jumping into crates does give you a lot of points. It's just that once you go into cooldown, that's kind of an issue. But if we instead follow up our jumping into the crates with a donut, then we can get the real money. Doing exactly this, I got a whopping $23,380. Obviously not what we're looking for, but this would in fact be enough to beat the freestyle if we were on normal mode. But of course, because we're doing this on extreme mode, we gotta get that 45 grand. So then on my next go around, I kinda just optimized what I did on my last run. But then I also figured out you can get money after your freestyle ends. This probably won't be very useful for us, given that once the timer does run out, it already tells you if you win or lose. But just a little weird thing I found. Now, on my next few attempts, I would make a little bit more each time, but it was getting pretty clear I was starting to plateau. At this point, I had figured out that jumping into the barriers wasn't the best strat. Instead, just jumping off the crush car ramps and then following up with a donut was the best way to go. But that's the thing, I couldn't really find any more ways to innovate this. To me, this genuinely seemed like the most optimal strategy possible in this freestyle. So, after getting my final PB for the time being of $31,250, I figured it was time to get some other eyes on this. Has anyone ever beaten Monster Jam Maximum Destruction's freestyle mode on extreme difficulty? I've been trying for a few hours now, and the best I've gotten is $31,250 out of the $45,000 goal. The best strategy that I've come up with so far is to jump over the crush car ramps, follow up with a spin/donut, and then repeat. If anyone has any ideas on how I could optimize or improve this, please let me know. After posting this to my Discord, I immediately received discouragement, as well as one bit of advice, but nothing that would actually make the difference for me to get to 45,000. But then, that's where Jacob Turbo comes in. Jacob immediately taught me how to do a stunt that I didn't even know was in this game. That of course being the wheelie. Which in the end I didn't really use much in my runs because the wheelie's not very good in this game. However, after hammering home just how impossible I found this freestyle to be, I managed to get Jacob on board to give it a go. Finally, it wasn't just me trying to beat this game's 23-year-old freestyle on my own. After only an hour, Jacob had already beaten my high score by about $5,000. Now at this point, I logged off to take a break for the night. But by the next morning, Jacob had a high score of 40,550, which means he was within $5,000 of completing the freestyle. And then under just 2 hours later, Jacob sends this. It wasn't even close. Jacob beat the freestyle by over $4,000. Making Monster Jam video game history overnight. So, okay, how did he do it then? Well, basically, by spamming both the donut and the jump at the same time, you can cancel out the cooldown of both tricks at once, and basically just have an infinite money generator. So of course, with Jacob having done all this, I had to give it a go myself.
3, 2, 1, go!
So I jumped into a freestyle, literally, did my air donuts, and on my very first attempt of the morning, this is what I got.
It's another win for Spider-Man!
$54,600 just like that. Jacob's strategy basically broke the freestyle. So I tried optimizing this the best I could, getting personal best after personal best, finishing out on 72,940, which for the time being, to my knowledge, is the world record. Well, before this video ends, I obviously want to give a huge shout out to Jacob Turbo for being the first person to complete Monster Jam Maximum Destruction's freestyle on extreme difficulty. I'll leave a link to his channel right here, leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.